60610. Fantasy Focus.
What's good? Welcome into Fantasy Focus. Daniel Dopp, Yates, Stephania Bell back for another show. First week almost in the books for what it's worth. If this is your first week here, go back and check out our tier shows. We talked quarterbacks, running backs, wide receivers. Yesterday, we helped you win your draft with Mike Clay's playbook, and today we're diving into rookies. But first, guys, we got to watch football last night. Stephania, I don't know how much of this game you watched, only 3 quarters, but what did it feel like to see football happening on the field finally?
Watched it on my phone on an airplane coming back.
I love it. Dedication.
That's commitment. No, it was great. And in fact, it sort of, got away from me because, as you know, I was at Dolphins camp yesterday and I was just focused on that.
It's a humble
I was
brag.
like, oh,
Big deal.
We'll
talk about it.
I've got football I can watch right now on this little device in the
So
palm
great.
of my hand. It was phenomenal. And by the way, shout out to Cam Akers because 2 Achilles repairs and he looked good. And
Spin move.
Injury person loves to see the guys who come back from injury and have a good first out.
Yeah, shout out to Cam Akers. If you don't think I'm going to get sucked back into that one, you are gravely mistaken. And congratulations to Bears wide receiver Colin Johnson. I just got this news alert from Adam Schefter. He is signing a 5-year, $200 million extension after last night's dominating performance. He was legit last night. And by the way, that call that was overturned, that catch, we should have a new rule. The rule of cool needs to apply during the NFL preseason.
Style
I like
points.
I don't think we're going to have the preseason for much longer in the NFL.
See.
So if a catch looks sweet, even if it isn't a catch, it's a completion on the field. No more overturning
Been
cool
watching
plays.
the Olympics.
Yeah.
It's like style points.
Yeah,
Like,
totally.
Exactly.
Same.
you have a
I would
score.
like that to happen. So, about 42 minutes of game action last night. The game being called late in the third quarter. Understandably so, but it was great to have some football back on our screens. Welcome back, Joe Buck and Troy Aikman. Love to hear those guys in the booth. Can't wait for Monday Night Football.
How did you feel about the style points around the new NFL kickoff? We didn't see anyone break it, but I'll tell you what, it looks like there can be a lot of excitement around that play this year.
You know what I saw? I saw very conservative. I think everybody's waiting till
For
the
regular
season
season.
to pull out the
Yeah.
stops on what that play is going to look like because I think it's going to get really exciting. People can get very creative with this.
Yeah, 7 out of 8 kickoffs will return. So the return is back.
Right. Yes.
I mean, we talked about it as kind of a dying play over the past, handful of years with kickers just booming kicks through the uprights off kickoffs. I did love this. Favorite part. We love Mike. We love Mike so much. But like last night after the first kickoff, Mike had like 3 tweets about the mechanics, how returns are going to work. And I'm just like, your brain is so beautiful. I wish I could get inside of it for 1 minute, but that brain is too wonderful and unique for anybody else to be allowed to tap into it. Mike, you are one of a kind. I can't wait to see how that impacts the projections because I'm sure it does some way, somehow.
Some way, somehow. It was very exciting to be able to see. We got a lot that we are excited about this year. But for what it's worth, we got another show today. Oh, by the way, today's show, in case you are not able to watch it on YouTube, you can watch us right now. ESPN2 at 2 p.m. today.
Loose on the deuce.
Being able to dive into the show with that. Let's get things kicked off with the opening drive. Dun, 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 dun. Okay, they're supposed to be.
I was supposed to do the music there.
Yeah, there we
wasn't
go.
I? Dang it, I missed my cue.
You guys are in preseason form. That's what you're in.
That's what it is. No big deal.
I will be in preseason form until week 8. So just a heads up for those that are watching or listening right now.
That's so good. All right. Unfortunately, we're going to be talking about a couple of injuries that took place, Stephania. Still excited about this, though, to be able to finally have you back on the show. We only had you once this week, so it's excited to have you here in the seat. Let's talk about Justin Herbert. He has been sliding down our draft boards as one of the quarterbacks that we used to love in fantasy football, now outside our top 10, and now also currently dealing with a foot injury. What can you tell us about his status?
Certainly doesn't help his status for either fantasy or real football. Dealing with a plantar fascia injury. I thought it was really interesting how the Chargers worded this in the statement. An injury to the plantar fascia of his right foot. So for those who don't know, plantar fascia is the arch of your foot. It's a big band of tissue that supports the arch of your foot. And when it tears, especially if you have a partial tear, which I'm interpreting this to be because they called it an injury as opposed to plantar fasciitis. There's a little threading the needle there. But let's say that's what it is. Every time you take a step, you're stretching it and putting strain on it, and it is painful. So they've talked about putting him in a boot to rest it for a couple weeks, and then hopefully he'll be back. But honestly, that doesn't mean it's going to feel better. It may
2
just be
weeks.
something he's going to push through. We've seen, if you remember, Eli Manning dealt with a plantar fascia injury that really he stayed with him the entire season. I, by the way, in support of Justin Herbert, have actually torn the plantar fascia in my foot a few weeks ago, and I'm here to tell you it is excruciating.
Yeah, but you haven't missed work.
Yeah.
I know, but I'm different.
You're built different.
You're an iron woman,
built
Stephania.
different.
That's why.
And, like me, he's tough, and I think he'll play through it. But I think let's see where he is week 1. I think it might show up. Deep passes, ability to move around the pocket. It's a tough one.
Real quick, Field. We weren't already, he wasn't a guy we had inside our top 12. Does this move the needle a whole lot from a fantasy perspective?
No, just a reminder, if you play in a 10-team league, you can afford to be patient at quarterback, but draw the line. Don't get stuck behind the train of quarterback picks. And if you play in a deeper league, this is why it's understandable if in the first 2 rounds of a 16-team league or the first 3 rounds in a 14-team league, you see 3, 4, 5 quarterbacks go off the board because there is depth, but it does drop off at a very notable part. That includes where Justin Herbert is currently ranked.
Totally with you on that. All right, Stephania, we got another quarterback, unfortunately, Geno Smith. I saw from Brady Henderson, who does a phenomenal job out there with Seahawks camp. He's getting testing done on his hip and his knee, but it feels kind of vague. Do we know what's going on with Geno?
We don't. I think this is where we miss Pete Carroll. Pete Carroll, of who would volunteer a lot of information. McDonald not giving as much. It sounds like hip and knee issues, and he said they would see after further imaging. So we wait and see, but you never like to hear that, obviously. Nobody has an injury that they saw that they could report.
Sure.
So we're left waiting for more information.
Just a reminder, Sam Howell's the backup quarterback there. Yeah. Probably, wait, who is it? Drew Lock's now in New York. It's Sam Howell in Seattle. So, I mean, obviously, having weapons like Jake Bobo at your disposal would make life easier for Sam if he has to take some starting reps over the next few weeks here. But, yeah, we'll have an update on Geno accordingly when there is one.
Yeah.
I would just say it's a reminder at this point in the season, teams are going to be conservative. So even if it's something small, if you see like, oh, they're going to not have him do something for a couple of weeks, it's because they're thinking long term.
All right, well, speaking of not doing something for a couple of weeks, Stephania, DeAndre Hopkins, I saw also dealing with a knee injury, but I saw a timeline of potentially 4 to 6 weeks attached to it. What can you tell me about Nuke?
Just that they're not saying anything other than that it's a knee injury. We saw him with a wrap. There was some video of that. Again, I wouldn't read too much into that, but that 4 to 6 week range, if you just look at the timing, 4 weeks coming back would give him about a week before the start of the season. 6 weeks would mean he would miss the first game. Again, I expect them to be conservative, veteran player who's dealt with injuries in the past. It doesn't sound like this is serious, but they're giving an kind of a lengthy time projection to allow him to come back at his convenience.
He'll drop in drafts. The reason why I say that is unless he's back on the field like well before like peak draft season gets started, I consider a peak draft season call it like August 20th until like Monday or Tuesday before the season begins. You're going to see DeAndre Hopkins drop a little bit because people are going to say, yeah, he could be really good, but I don't want to have to deal with him not being available potentially in week 1 or maybe for a game or 2 at the beginning.
Maybe more of an audition for Treylon Burks. I mean, this is his chance, right? They told him it would be.
Make the team.
He's
right?
got,
Yeah.
but this is his opportunity to do so.
This is that chance. Yep. So hopefully, fingers crossed, we get Nuke back at a reasonable time and we can have positive fantasy things moving forward for these guys. All right, back here on the show, Daniel Dopp, Field Yates, Stephania Bell. Guys, we're talking about instant impact rookies for this year. It's always exciting when we get new people on new teams. Shiny new toy syndrome is the one thing, though, that I want to avoid, right? Sometimes we overvalue certain people. Sometimes we get too much into the hype of what rookies are.
Sometimes you draft Devon Achane in the War Room League, and it actually pays off.
And it works out for you. I love that.
It does.
You're not
Yes,
wrong.
it did.
You're not wrong. All right, so
Flex on him.
We're going to do a true and false situation here.
Okay.
All right, our crew upstairs gave us a couple of different scenarios that they're going to throw at us. The first one starts around Jaden Daniels. All three of us are going to answer this question and then make our case for it.
Got it.
Jaden Daniels will lead all quarterbacks in rushing as a rookie. True or false, Field Yates?
I'm going with false.
Stephania?
Yeah, I'm going with false.
I'm going to say false, but it's not crazy if it's true to me.
No. It's not so like there's a chance. Yes,
There's absolutely
a chance. But unless I missed some sort of tweet from Adam Schefter about Lamar Jackson retiring, I'm not betting on Jaden Daniels. The threshold that we're talking about is probably at least 850 rushing yards. That's kind of where like Lamar Jackson's floor is, or give or take 50 yards, right? Obviously, there's some games missed that can impact that, but Lamar is going to end up rushing for probably close to 800 yards by the time it's all said and done. Love Jaden Daniels. I do see shades of Lamar as a runner. I'm going to go with false here. Lamar still the king in that category.
Yeah, Lamar's projection by Mike Clay, 736 rushing yards. Jaden Daniel under 600 for projection at 584, but he's still the number 2 quarterback in Mike's projections as a rookie. Mike oftentimes a little conservative from that respect, so wouldn't shock me, like you had said, if he is the number 1 quarterback, but I think as long as Lamar is healthy and out there doing Lamar Jackson type things, it's not crazy to me if he actually doesn't finish as the number 1.
Yeah, I agree with that. And just on Mike's, those are kind of median outcomes, is what Mike is describing. Average outcomes. The highest, the quarterback with the most passing touchdowns is probably going to have more than whatever the highest projected quarterback passing touchdown figure is right now. The player that finishes with the most sacks is probably going to I don't think Mike has anybody projected for 21 sacks this season, right? But it could very well happen if recent history is an indicator. So just understand that when you're seeing those rushing projections, and I'm telling you that 800 is kind of the floor for Lamar, and Mike is only projecting for 734. Just understand sort of the methodology behind those projections.
Yep, 100% on that one. Also, Jaden Daniels should still have a fantastic rookie season.
Great rookie.
If he finishes as the number 2 quarterback in rushing, I think everyone will be pretty happy that drafted him in fantasy.
That's
I was
exactly
just going to say, look at the company he's keeping, even in these projections. Anthony Richardson, who we expect to continue to run the ball, despite some people's concern that he might not after the shoulder injury. And Jalen Hurts, we already know what he can do with his legs. So this is who he's matched up with. I think it's a pretty good indicator.
Right out of the gate, if you're getting mentioned in the same company as these names, I think that's pretty good for you.
Yeah, I'd say so.
All right, another rookie quarterback here. Caleb Williams, here is the segment. He's going to finish as a top 5 quarterback in fantasy football. Stephania Bell, true or false?
I actually really like Caleb Williams as a player. I think he's going to be fantastic in Chicago, but I'm going to say false for fantasy purposes. We've had this conversation before where it feels like, tell me who to move out of the top 5, right? If he's going to finish in top 5 overall as a quarterback, who are you bumping out
That's
of the top
question.
5? And I just don't think that this is the year that he is going to threaten to do that.
Yeah, if we retooled the segment and called it buy or sell, and it was is this possible? I would say buy, but in a binary outcome of true or false, will this happen or won't it happen? I'm going to go with false here, betting on the more likely outcome being him not finishing in the top 5. If you look at the quarterbacks that I have outside of my top 4, you're seeing players 5 through 14 right now. Caleb Williams currently slotted at quarterback 12. You're going to have guys, actually, these are actually Mike's projections. These are not my rankings, but close enough to it, right? You're going to have to leapfrog a bunch of guys. Dak Prescott, Jordan Love, Brock Purdy, Kyler Murray. That's going to require a tremendous season. If it does happen, though, for Caleb Williams, good news. The Chicago Bears are going to the playoffs.
Yeah, seriously. If
it happens, that's how good that team will be.
Given all the pass catchers that are there.
You going false or true?
I'm going false. I think that's just too rich.
Who says false or true? What am I? What a weird question to ask.
It's like saying I did this once. It's like saying the score backwards.
Losing teams. Yes.
Losing teams.
Someone was the Bears are down 0-7 to the Commanders. It's
who does that?
They're down 7-0.
I think we know who does that now.
Yeah, that's true.
Okay.
That's true. All right, I'm taking Caleb Williams, unfortunately, false. I do expect him to hopefully have a good season, especially with all the pass catchers at his disposal.
You don't mean that. Lions fan doesn't mean that. You can be neutral.
I can be neutral.
There we go.
Yeah.
There we go.
Objective and neutral, Daniel Dopp.
Let's talk about Marvin Harrison Jr. This is a big one.
Yeah.
Marvin Harrison Jr., I'm not sure we've had anyone with his pedigree at the wide receiver position come in a little bit. Marvin Harrison Jr. Will break the rookie touchdown record of 17 receiving touchdowns set by Randy Moss. I love Marvin Harrison Jr.
Yeah, me too.
I'm not sure we see anybody break that record in the next decade, even with how much passing has become a thing this year. I'm going to say false.
Yeah, I'm going to say false.
17 touchdowns is a lot.
I'm going to say false as well. Again, we are betting on extremes in each of these scenarios so far, so it's tough. So two things can be true at once. I think the answer is false, but I also feel like an incredible season is on tap. I was doing the math today as I was writing a piece that will go up on ESPN.com later on this month. I have Marvin Harrison Jr. as wide receiver 9. That is 4.3 slots higher than the average rank of my fellow rankers here at ESPN. So I love Marvin Harrison Jr. I mean, I think the next closest ranker is wide receiver 11, and there's some that are down like wide receiver 15 or 16. Which, by the way, is not crazy when you look at the wide receiver depth, but I am stating my case that I am all in on Marvin Harrison Jr., but not all in enough that I think he is going to break a record that has stood now for, quick math, 27 years.
Yeah.
You want a fun fact?
Yes, I love fun facts.
His father of the same name, right?
Yes.
Hence the junior. second among rookies in receiving touchdowns when he was a rookie in 96.
Really?
So if he comes in second, it'll be just like his dad. And I
Nice.
think I made a bold prediction back in one of those roundtables that we did eons ago that I thought by the time he was done with his career, he might pass his dad in total receptions. I think volume-wise and reception-wise, he could come out on top this year, but I don't think he'll exceed the 17 touchdowns.
17 touchdowns is going to be a lot. I'm excited to see what his career is going to look like, given the fact that Marvin Harrison Jr. played with a guy named Peyton Manning, who was a pretty good quarterback.
I'd say so, yeah.
So, if you look at the best rookie touchdown season since 1995, Randy Moss had 17. Jamar Chase, 13. Tyreek Hill and OBJ and Mike Evans all tied with 12. Those guys are really good wide receivers.
I would say so, yeah.
So if Marvin Harrison Jr. is in this conversation, again, another good group of people to be with. 17 is just, like you're saying.
And he
you're just
did it in
fading
one less
extremes.
game.
He did it with one less game. You're
Yeah.
right. You're right.
He did, yeah, I mean, his dad also has the single-season record for targets. In a 16-game season, 204 targets.
That's
year.
absurd.
Marvin Harrison Jr.
That's absurd.
We are in this incredible era right now of fantasy football players where we have like this depth of stardom at the very top. But there were some they're just some stars back in the day. Like back in the day, like Marshall Faulk, Edgerrin James, LaDainian Tomlinson, like what those guys were doing was so far. And I mean, Christian McCaffrey is amazing. And like the seasons he's had in recent vintage have been incredible. These guys were like, is standard deviations the right way of describing this? Like standard deviations above what CMC is doing right now. I need my
I'm not
Ivy
a
League to
math
help out.
person.
Okay,
Like,
whatever. What I'm trying to say
I was
is
a
like
liberal arts
this was
major.
even better, even better. Like those guys back in the day were putting up like LT had 28 touchdowns one season.
Well,
Insane.
that we could get it, but that really, I mean,
Best
him
fantasy
and
football
like
season
Marshall Faulk changed the game, and this is when we started seeing running backs who were pass catchers who really kind of paved the way for what we're seeing now.
Gosh. I love hearing those names. It makes me think of Sean Alexander, Priest Holmes,
Yeah.
Larry Johnson. Hey, that was a running back duo that maybe did things at the
Yeah,
same time.
100%. Yep.
Forgot about those guys. All right,
Undrafted Priest Holmes
let's
from
keep on moving forward. Where's he from?
Texas.
How do you know these?
Not because I don't have
Brain is
important
so
information.
stupid. You-
I don't
All
know
right,
what standard deviations are, but I can tell you where some guy that played 20 years ago went to college.
Let's talk about Malik Neighbors. Here it is for Malik Neighbors. Neighbors will be top 10 in wide receiver targets this season in 2024. I'll tell you what. I'm going to say true.
You're going to go true. Okay.
I went true too because I was like, targets. The ball could be off target. He doesn't
it's
have
still
to
targets.
catch it. It's still targets. And when you have a guy on a team where there's so little competition, I mean, he's clearly going to be the prime target.
What is that
for Daniel
competition?
Jones.
Like Daniel Jones, Darren Waller has left, right? Mike made that clear. So you've got Daniel Bellinger, Theo Johnson at the tight end position. For wide receivers, you've got Wan'Dale Robinson coming back. You've got Darius Slayton, who's still there.
Jalen Hyatt.
Jalen Hyatt was a third or fourth rounder from last
Round
year.
pick. Yep.
And then who? I mean, Sterling Shepard, I don't think is still with the team. Or if
He's
he
not.
is.
He's with the Bucks now.
Okay.
Yep.
So who are you throwing the football to at that point?
Yeah, it's going to be a lot of Malik Neighbors. This was the most plausible so far for me.
Yes.
I'm still going to go with false. If you listen to the Hoop Collective, I'm playing the Tim Bontemps role, the
Yeah.
USWB. Our producer Jackson will certainly understand that reference right there. I'm the wet blanket. I've got 4 for 4 with falses right now. The biggest concern I have right now as far as the projections for Malik Neighbors is not what I think his role will be. It's just go to the top, right? Like, I don't think he's going to outpace CeeDee Lamb, Tyreek Hill, A.J. Brown, Justin Jefferson, Jamar Chase, Amon-Ra St. Brown, Garrett Wilson, right? Like, the guys at the very top of the heap, and I'm sure I just forgot somebody when I was describing them right there, Devontae Adams, so saturated within their offense that, like, there's a very clear case for like 12 or 13 to be well ahead of Malik Neighbors, so it's hard for me to go there. I certainly hope it happens, though. I do feel like I'm a little bit too pessimistic on Malik Neighbors as far as my ranking goes, and yet I have the highest rank amongst all ESPN rankers at 24 amongst our wide receivers.
I think you brought up a really good point earlier in the week when it's like, is the gap between Marvin Harrison Jr. and Malik Neighbors really as wide as it should be? I mean, it does feel like it should be closer, but it keeps coming back to this thing where, like, okay, so who am I going to move out of the wide receiver position? Because this is the one guy I haven't seen, and I have seen it from these other dudes. So
There might be a few where you can make the case and you're like, wait, so you've got him behind 2 Texans wide receivers. Are those guys going to cannibalize each other? And like DK Metcalf, really good player, has 2 other very competent wide receivers around him. And like, he's never been quite at the same level of volume as some of those top tier wide receivers. Like, there are guys that you could make a case Like if I went to court and had to argue for Malik Neighbors ahead of those guys for fantasy football wide receiver rankings purposes, I feel pretty good about it. Now, I've also been watching Presumed Innocent recently.
Okay.
So my brain, have you guys watched it yet?
No, but I
No,
know.
I saw the original one, the original movie back in the day. So I have not
movie back
seen
in
the
the
new
day?
one.
Oh, okay. No, this is it's a series on Apple TV. So my brain is like I'm a lawyer these days.
Yeah.
Not actually, but
No,
my brain I am.
definitely
Go
not.
watch it if you haven't.
I will do that. I want to ask so many questions, and I'm not going to.
Yes.
We're gonna
Probably
keep them.
smart.
I will say this: rookie wide receivers. Each of the last 3 years, there has been one rookie wide receiver that has been in the top 10 in targets.
See?
Each of the last 3 years. Puka Nacua last year, which is probably not the one that you would have picked at the beginning of the season for what it's worth. Garrett Wilson the year before, and then Jalen Waddle the year before that. So
Welcome to the club, Marvin Harrison Jr. That's my
I was
answer,
gonna say,
right? You know,
it could
like-
be him. That's the thing. If there's only been one and you have to pick one, the only reason I went with Malik Neighbors is just because the lack of other options in that.
so this segment will
Neighbors
be
have more targets and Marvin Harrison Jr. have more touchdowns. It's possible.
That could be.
also like this segment would be really boring if all three of us voted false for every single one.
Right.
Do we board bet this? Do we board bet
No.
Malik Neighbors having more targets than Marvin Harrison Jr.?
I mean, I would be happy to do something of that vintage. Like whenever
Do you like it? Do you not like it that much?
I know. I'm
I will
fine
board
with it,
bet
but
you
it's
and
a
I.
weird board bet because then there's three of us and like where's
okay,
the
well you
board?
want we can solidify it. Do we can do it today? We can wait on it if you want to.
Let's wait on it.
Okay,
Let's
but
wait on it. We'll
there's a
bring it
Malik
back.
Neighbors, Marvin Harrison Jr. board bet that's brewing between three of us, maybe two of us.
We'll figure out a way to make all of this
Figure it out.
work.
Love
all
it.
right.
Yep.
All right.
Maybe.
Next one up. Last wide receiver that we have here, Roma Dunze.
Yep.
Love.
I know everyone loves Roma Dunze. Roma Dunze will emerge as the Bears' wide receiver one by season's end. They've got DJ Moore and Keenan Allen there, friends.
And Cole Kmet.
I'm going to say true.
You're gonna say true? I'm gonna say false.
I'm going to say false.
Yeah, why do you guys, you are the wet blanket.
Yes, I am. Thank you. As people
field
know,
is
me
really- I
ever
had
the
one true.
You had one
non-positive
true.
spirit. That's right. You had one true. This is. I mean, it's an incredible. This is the reason why we have so much optimism, both real and fantasy, for Caleb Williams. Is the idea that Roma Dunze has a chance to emerge in not that long from now, like a top 15 receiver in the NFL.
Yeah.
Real life skill set.
Yep.
And yet, right now, this season, he might be the third best receiver on his own team. DJ Moore's a special football player. He set basically every Bears receiving record last season. Obviously, just got that massive 4-year, $110 million extension. To me, kind of another testament to the fact that while Roma Dunze could very well get to that level one day, I am bullish on this player. They've already got the guy who has reached that level in hand with DJ Moore, so I am in on him as the wide receiver.
Yeah, I think so too. And the other thing is Keenan Allen and Caleb Williams have a pretty special relationship. Knew each other in LA a bit, have been working a lot together. And Keenan Allen, what is more of a security blanket for a new quarterback than a guy who is perhaps one of the best route runners and is going to be there for him in safety situations? I think it could surprise people. Keenan Allen could end up becoming the number one target for Caleb Williams.
I like it.
I'll tell you what, last season, DJ Moore, 6 games inside the top 10, 9 games outside the top 30. A little bit of yo-yo there from DJ
A little bit,
Moore.
for sure.
I'm going to
Yeah,
go with
but-
Roma Dunze just because it's a
Bold
bold
news.
call. Let's have a little bit of fun. Also, I need to give a little love to another NFC North team for once in my life. All right, back here on Fantasy Focus, Daniel Dopp, Stephania Bell, Field Yates, making our way through some rookie conversation, guys that could have impact here in year one. Field, the only guy we didn't mention that was a first rounder, not a quarterback, in the last segment was Brock Bowers.
Yeah.
Brock Bowers, we had so much hope for coming into the draft, and then unfortunately goes to a Raiders team that just doesn't give us as much confidence from a fantasy perspective in year one. Do you think that he can still have an impact as a rookie, though, for a fantasy team?
I do think it's possible. So we've got 2 gravitational pulls going on right now, right? The gravitational pull 1 is what you just referenced. We had so much hope for this player, right?
did.
Because he is a rare bird amongst tight end prospects. This guy is special. He's different. He's unique. He's potentially, going to be a top 5 tight end by like year 2 or 3 of his NFL career in real life. We'll see in fantasy. The other gravitational force is that he goes to a team that has maybe the NFL's only quarterback competition that's actually real right now, right?
Because the other quarterback competitions you're saying are rookies that have veterans that are kind of like in their spot.
Like, the Patriots have kind of said it's going to be Jacoby Brissett, right, to start the season.
Vikings
Maybe
have-
Minnesota, maybe that's a real quarterback competition as well.
Pittsburgh?
I'm sorry. That one, I'm starting to buy. Like, I've been thinking it's a competition, but let me put it this way. The only one where the team has at no
There you
point
go.
made it clear, like, this is the lean,
Yeah.
is the Raiders. You know, there was some Aiden O'Connell buzz. I think that was more like the incumbent, respected veteran. But the bottom line is this: he's got quarterback question marks. He goes to a team that already has Devontae Adams, who will be close to the top 10 in targets once again this season, if not inside the top 5. Jacoby Myers, a 100-plus target per season receiver, and then Michael Mayer, who's he's 35th pick in the draft last year at tight end. So you've got two separate gravitational pulls. In the preseason, we are talking about not just like what specifically will happen, but all the things that could happen. And one of them could be that Brock Bowers, this good, just emerges with a steady enough role. And while there is better tight end depth than usual this year, getting somewhere between 6 and 8 targets a game is plenty good for somebody like Brock Bowers to emerge as a top 10 player at the position.
I don't want to, this is not a direct one-to-one correlation, but does what's happening in Las Vegas, having both Brock Bowers and having, I just blanked on his name, who
Michael
they drafted
Mayer?
last year,
Michael
Michael
Mayer.
Mayer.
Yep.
Is that similar to what it is that we saw last year with Dalton Kincaid and Dawson Knox when you potentially have a rookie come in? Did they love Michael Mayer enough, like the way that the Bills wanted to utilize Dawson Knox? Or does this immediately come in and it's like, I know we drafted Mayer in the 2nd round with the 35th overall pick last year, but this is immediately Brock Bowers' team, and we're going to find ways to make him more involved than Mayer.
It's a good one. You know, the quarterback play obviously is a whole lot better there.
In Buffalo? Yeah,
yes.
without question.
It's a fair question. I would say this. Other than Stephon Diggs, I wasn't convinced going into last season that any of the Bills' pass catchers were better than Dalton Kincaid.
It's fair.
So that applies with Brock Bowers again this year, right? Like, I still think there's a chance that he's the 2nd best pass catcher on the roster behind
Devontae.
But I do think Jacoby Myers is a better player than anybody the Bills had in tow last year.
It's fair. That's a very fair
So
point.
it's like it, but there are some
Like I
dissimilarities.
said, not a direct
too.
correlation.
It's in the
but
ballpark for sure.
it made me think about it a little bit. Stephania, I want to talk to you about Trey Benson, too. Another guy that we think could have a major impact. Part of the reason, though, is because of the guy that he is playing behind. We think that there could be potential opportunity because James Conner, as much as we love him, one of the things that we know in fantasy is he always finds ways to miss time, unfortunately.
Well, I think, and I just apologies to James Conner because I feel like this label gets attached to him. But really, they find me a running back who makes it through the season without going unscathed, and it's getting more and more rare.
A lot harder.
And one of the things about James Conner that's been so impressive is what he's able to produce when he is on the field. So he is consistently productive and looks fantastic, but he's consistently missing about an average of 4 games if you look across his career. Any one of those games that he is expected to miss, because we just bake it into the projections, Trey Benson gets a shot and things could start to switch. I mean, Trey Benson is explosive. He's powerful. I hate to have to give love to Florida State so much as a Miami grad, but there's a lot of Florida State in this draft that's uber talented, and Trey Benson is one of them. Had a big injury, already proved that he could come back from that. That was a couple of years ago before he transferred to Florida State. And I just think he is going to make a mark once he gets an opportunity.
I keep saying this, right? If you're looking for a sleeper for all 17 games, I don't have an answer for you that includes Trey Benson. If you're looking for a sleeper that might be for like 4 to 6 games, the answer is Trey Benson, right? We saw this with a fellow former Florida State running back in Cam Akers back during his early career,
Absolutely,
right?
yeah.
Where it was like, it wasn't that he had value for the full season, but down the stretch, he was a difference maker. If Trey Benson gets a pocket of games to start because of a James Conner injury, I feel very confident he will be an excellent player in that opportunity. He, I think, was artificially sort of pushed down the boards because of the depth of wide receiver and offensive tackles and quarterbacks this season. I think he was better than the 71st overall player in this year's draft class.
Where did you have him when you were doing all your first draft rankings? Where did you have him in the running back class?
He was my number one rated running back. Number one.
Number 1
Ahead
rated.
of Jonathan Brooks. Now,
Wow.
that was factoring in, of course, that Jonathan Brooks tore his ACL in November. But I thought they were both like top 45 to 50-ish players. So I thought it was an incredible value for Arizona.
By the way, I just want to shout out this incredible video board, because when you guys start talking and I would rather watch something else, I'm looking at this video board going, this is amazing.
Sick.
And how great that everyone gets to see they've cultivated all these little shots from around the league. So here we are talking about Trey Benson, and here he is showing off how he can catch passes working in with the
Very
running
good
backs.
pass catcher as well. Yep.
Definitely feels like, and you kind of alluded to it, Stephania, if there was a situation, I do not want to project this, but if there was a situation where if Trey Benson or a rookie were able to get a shot and potentially not relinquish it, given all the hype and pedigree that you have on Trey Benson, I would love to see what he could do with the Cardinals this year. All right, another guy that we love, Blake Corum.
Yeah, and I'll kind of make this quick because I think some of the same logic applies for Blake Corum to Trey Benson. It's going to be the Kyron Williams show. Blake Corum, though, plays a very similar enough game to Kyron Williams that if he does get an opportunity because Kyron Williams is unavailable and he has missed time in each of his first 2 seasons in the NFL, the Rams offense will not taper off like we saw it taper off in the running game last year when Kyron Williams was not available. So he's a very, very valuable insurance policy. Very valuable.
Coming back to those comments that it feels a couple years ago, Sean McVay, when he was talking about Todd Gurley, and he was like, I'm just not going to pay a running back again. I'm just going to rotate through him.
Yeah, I mean,
and he hasn't really done that yet. It doesn't feel like, because Kyron Williams has been the guy. A lot of touches there, but I'm interested to see if they can finally do that with Blake Corum, because I think that he will fit this skill set, and also just giving Kyron Williams a little bit of a breather.
Yeah, a little bit, right? But I also say, like, and 2 NFC West coaches are going to be lumped into this conversation. Coaches can't help themselves, right? Like, we know Christian McCaffrey should play less, and yet he played over 80% of the total snaps last year while missing weeks 18 because, of course, I think it was a calf, but it was
a meaningless game. It was a
They had already clinched the #1 seed. There was something to gain.
Isn't that nice when you have a meaningless game in Week 18?
Those happen like for one team a year.
I know.
Meaningless in the sense that like you've clinched the highest seed possible that you could reach. Anyways,
good. All right, another running back we want to talk about. Obviously, Fields, you mentioned him just a little earlier. Excuse me, Jonathan Brooks. Stephania, he mentioned coming back from that ACL. How much should we be concerned about him in his rookie season returning from injury?
Well, I think the thing is we just don't know what his volume of work is going to be. And there's a fine line between bringing someone back from an ACL injury and ramping up their activity and getting them going work-wise and overloading them and having it result in a compensatory injury. It's so interesting to me because this happens every year with the seasonal calendar. There's like this target on week 1. Can somebody be ready by week 1? And it's like we talk about this all the time. Return to play and return to performance are not the same thing. You've invested. The Panthers want to go and get Jonathan Brooks, so you don't want to do something that's going to put him at risk for his career longevity by trying to force him out there and to do too much too soon. So for me, for fantasy purposes, I've been pretty conservative on Jonathan Brooks and maybe even shying away only because I'm seeing him get drafted ahead of where I would want to take him.
That was going to be my big question. We've just done this huge mock draft exercise at ESPN Fantasy. Go check it out in case you have not done it yet. But there's a lot of great information. I was going to ask if, given this injury, have you found yourself, based on his ADP, not because of the player, that you're not drafting him in that mock draft exercise?
That's me. Yes, I am that person.
We did it 35 times. I think I had a little bit of exposure there. Like at some point, you're bound to take almost every notable player.
Everyone's somewhere, yeah.
But I am in Camp Bell here. I rarely drafted Jonathan Brooks. I largely am fading him. He's on the NFI list right now. It's August 2nd. If he's off the NFI list tomorrow, that's a full month before the season begins. My optimism might grow. But I don't anticipate him coming off the NFI list today. And what if he's still on there 2.5 weeks from now? It's August 20th and he still hasn't practiced. Like, you do the math. Is he going to be ready to play a legitimate role in week 1 for a rookie, for a team that's young and trying to get better, not trying to just win week 1 and prove a point?
Right.
The answer is no.
You have to acclimate to NFL football, and you can't do that in 1 week.
Yes. Yep. All right, we got one last wide receiver we're going to talk about. Too many names to be able to get into the entire show today, but we had to do this without Mike Clay being here. Jalen Polk.
If I'm going to cast my die on a Patriots receiver. I feel obligated to do so. He could have gotten drafted to the team with the best wide receiver depth in the entire NFL, and I probably still would have found a way to say nice things about Jalen Polk. Instead, he goes to the team that Mike had rated, of course, with the number 32 wide receiver room. So that would suggest an opportunity, right? Like Jalen Polk could emerge as the Patriots' #1 wide receiver. I've got him as my 58th receiver in my rankings right now, the only ranker on ESPN.com to have him inside the top 60. I just want people to know, when the pads come on, when real football actually begins, this guy will get better. He will improve every single day. He's a very good route runner. He's got great hands. The Patriots don't have this dominant #1 wide receiver. It wouldn't surprise me if Jalen Polk continues to earn a role every single day and plays 65 to 75% of the snaps right away for this team.
Could he break Randy Moss's 17 touchdowns?
I'm going to go with false. No.
Okay, false on that one as well. Okay,
love him. That's probably not.
Drafted him in our dynasty league.
Yes.
I'm proud of myself.
Heck yeah. Yeah,
Like
a lot of
what I'm
wide
hearing.
receivers, and I'm very pumped to see what he can do this year.
Yep.
Hey, little bit of note here. We are back out on the road heading to Boston on August 15th. We're going to Banners, baby. It's going to be a ton of fun. We are going to do a live show. Doors open at 6. Doors open at 5. Show starts at 6. It is $40 for a ticket. You get to come in, watch a show, have food, free non-alcoholic beverages, and then afterwards, we're doing a tailgate. Watching Patriots and Eagles with you at the show. It's going to be a ton of fun. Come check it out. August 15th at Banners in Boston. We'll see you there.
FantasyFocusLive.com to buy those tickets.
FantasyFocusLive.com.
What a deal.
All right, back here on Fantasy Focus, Stephania Bell, Field Yates, and Daniel Dopp, and we are diving into a couple of injuries. Stephania, you just came back from Dolphins camp. It's the first of probably many camps, as you usually do your camp tour here in August. I want to know, heading into August, right now, we just did this big mock draft exercise that I talked about. There's a bunch of players that are dealing with injuries that we've got to figure out. Do I want to make the decision to hit that draft button? Is it too early? Where are you at on a handful of these guys? Let's start with Nick Chubb, who had a huge injury last year, but has been one of the best running backs in football over the last 5 years.
This one is so hard for me because I love Nick Chubb, the running back. I love Nick Chubb, the runner, and I hated the injury that happened to him, multi-ligament knee injury to the same knee that he had injured in Georgia. And I think the optimism, if you look at what he did after that injury in Georgia, he put up 2 back-to-back 1,000-yard rushing seasons and got himself into the NFL and has excelled. And yes, I see that we're watching him squat 600 pounds. And no, there are not many people who can do that. But that's but one skill set that is required for him to be a running back. And the harder things when you're coming back from injury like this, not only speed and power, but things people might not think about, deceleration, things that are a lot of agility and control with that knee, balance when you've damaged a lot of the structures in there that control the feedback of how your knee feels when your foot hits the ground. Those take time. I thought it was very interesting that that the Browns have been very careful about what they say, like that there's no timetable on it, that he has a bit of a ways to go still, like nothing that makes it sound far away, but everything that makes there be no pressure on his time to return. I think they're going to take their time with him, even if he tries to push them. There's no reason to make him come back early, and even then, I still believe it'll be a work share thing. I don't believe he's coming back to be the number 1 back.
Can I ask this question, Stephania? When you watch him squatting this, right, 540 pounds, like you said, it's only one thing. Yeah, that's fair. When you see something like this, does it give you more excitement to potentially be able to draft him when you're doing mock drafts? No, this is not, because you're saying this is just one thing.
Right. This speaks to his incredible strength and the fact that he's getting his quads back well, which you love to see. But I like seeing the dynamic things more. I want to see them in motion. I want to see them in action. I want to see how they do when they have to escape. You know, those things matter more to me for a player at that position than how much they can squat, straight line running. Even when you see drills where they're moving on their own, it's such a far cry from the demand of what happens when you're moving against personnel that are coming towards you or you're having to power through tackles. That's very different.
Contrary to public belief, I don't squat 540 pounds, but I haven't figured out how this bar works.
I know.
This thing is bending like a straw.
Neither guy on
Like
each
a pool
side
noodle.
can even really support. Do they look like they're really able to spot that?
No.
I need to check something out. I will have this information soon. I could probably look it up right now, but that would be clumsy podcasting. The NFL, of course, has just one roster reduction now. Remember, it used to be 90 to 80 to 75. They just go down to 53 in one fell swoop. The Browns, of course, will have to make a decision on PUP for Nick Chubb, whether to keep him on the PUP list or to activate him from the PUP list. If they keep him on the PUP list, that means a minimum of 4 games missed. So if that roster cut down is when I think it is, I think it's a little bit ahead of, like, it's not the week of the first games. I think it's the week before the first games, which if you're a late drafter, you'd have a bit more information on Nick Chubb. But my current expectation is he remains on PUP past that cut down.
I think that's the ideal point if you're going to consider Nick Chubb. Hopefully you're drafting late. Stephania, if you were drafting right now for your league, which we would not suggest doing, we suggest you wait as long as possible to draft for your fantasy league, would you consider Nick Chubb in the later rounds as someone to be able to target, or are you worried long-term about this injury for this year?
I'm probably not targeting him. I mean, if he falls at a spot where
There's
I'm
good
like,
value.
there's room on my roster for him, then by all means, you know, and I'll also keep somebody else from having him. But I'm not actively targeting him. I think it's really interesting for the Browns right now. Not sure if you're aware what happened with Deontay Foreman.
Very scary.
Situation where he was hurt on the field, had to be helicoptered out. They were training at the Greenbrier, so the helicopter was part of getting him expeditiously to be examined and back, and everything's good now, but any head and neck injury, scary.
Always scary.
And it also speaks to their depth. Like, they've got to really think about what they're doing. We got Jerome Ford there, but now Deontay Foreman, who I thought might contribute early on, just something to keep an eye on there.
All right, let's talk about Aaron Rodgers. 4 plays last year. Huge expectations this season to be able to carry this Jets offense. What do we need to know about Aaron Rodgers?
Well, I think he's giving you everything you need to know. Look, he showed us last year that he was trying to get back before the season was out. Now you give him the entire offseason, the fact that he never actually had to come back and play football, but was on the verge of being ready. All you're doing during that time is it's tendon remodeling, reshaping, getting stronger. It only helps as far as the healing process for him. I'm not really that concerned. I think for the game that Aaron Rodgers plays now at his current age, he'll be fine.
Sure.
He talked about, on part of my take, how, like, if he was going to return last year, as unlikely as that seemed to me, he was going to have to play in a circle, right? Like, basically just like, quick passing game, handoffs, etc. Not concerned about the injury for Aaron Rodgers going into this season. I am concerned about the pressure cooker that is the New York Jets, but this team, if they stay healthy, should be excellent in 2020.
I don't know that his game is that much outside of the circle anymore.
Yeah.
I mean, we were wondering that, but we never got a chance to see it. And while he can still
it in the
do
bag.
Aaron Rodgers things, I'm not expecting him to scramble a
interesting.
ton,
No.
It'd be interesting to watch that early in the season. Like,
Yeah.
he's saying all the right things, and the timeline of him being available, over basically a year is reasonable for an Achilles recovery,
Right.
of course. But that's something amongst the things I'll be watching week 1 Monday Night Football when we're at Stephania's palatial estate.
I love it.
The 49ers travel to, you'll be at the game probably.
We'll see. But even a less mobile Aaron Rodgers, this is one of those where it's not great for fantasy, I don't think, but excellent for the Jets and for real football. Like, I think he does everything they need him to there. I'm not drafting him on my fantasy team.
Yeah, I think that's fair. We sort of have him ranked that way outside of our top 12 for a reason as well. All right, another quarterback with an Achilles injury, Stephania Kirk Cousins. Another quarterback with high expectations coming into the season to help elevate that Atlanta offense. What do we need to know about him?
Well, Atlanta wasn't too concerned about his injury when they paid him all that money to come there, but then they went out, as we know, in the draft and found insurance, a very expensive insurance policy. That being said, Kirk Cousins was never on the Aaron Rodgers, speeded up, accelerated rehab timeline. He was taking his time, slightly different procedure for Kirk Cousins, but essentially the same thing. A guy who's a little bit more senior at the quarterback position, having an Achilles injury. I think for the way that Kirk Cousins plays football, this is not going to be a huge limiting factor for him. The only difference, his plant leg is the one that he tore his Achilles on. So sometimes you see a loss of power, just like running backs, loss of power, explosiveness that takes a while to get back. When you have to push off to get the ball down the field, at times they can feel that.
Yeah.
Now, I don't know that it'll show up to that we could determine it, but it might take him a while to get there. The fact he's been practicing without limit, not really concerned.
Love to see that, and hopefully he keeps that game elevated for the other pass catchers in that offense. All right, we're
He's
going to
gonna
keep
have a big
things.
season. He's gonna have a big
Should
season.
have a good season.
Fantasy-wise, he'll be like right on the border of like being able to be started consistently in 12-team leagues. Right on that board. He'll be like, not a lot of weeks inside the top 8, but not a lot of weeks outside the top 16 either. That's where I think Kirk Cousins will settle in. But the biggest impact, of course, will be what it means for Drake London and the rest of this offense.
100%.
And
All right,
hopefully Kyle Pitts.
let's talk about Joe Burrow and concerns that we have there, Stephania. He has been falling a bunch in our drafts. We've been talking about him as a great value right now if you wait at the quarterback position. Are you concerned about Joe Burrow this year?
Yes, and I know that this is an unpopular take. There are a lot of people talking about, hey, he looks like the same guy. He's making throws. He's doing... And I'm thrilled. I want the best for Joe Burrow. This is a young man who's dealt with so many big injuries already in a short career, but this is just an injury we don't see in quarterbacks, so we don't have comps. Scapholunate ligament, big ligament in your wrist. We usually see it from guys who are blocking or getting their wrist jammed a lot. You have to do the surgery on it because otherwise you're going to end up with an arthritic wrist. But when you get scar tissue in a tiny area like your wrist, it can change your overall functionality. Now, to the naked eye, you might not see much, and it sounds like he's gradually increasing his volume of work, but think about it, where we are. He's still taking like a day off every couple of days. When we saw him at OTAs, he was talking about still having soreness up towards his elbow, which those are the muscles that control your wrist grip. This might show up later. This might show up in volume. This might show up volume of a game, volume of a season. That's where I'm a little more concerned. Not that he's all of a sudden the ball is going to fall out of his hand and he can't make a throw. No, it's not that.
Year.
Right. It's total volume of work. And if it starts to fatigue or get tired, is he start compensating somewhere else. That's what happened last year. And we saw how that played out. So color me a little bit skeptical until he gets to that point. You know what I wish? I wish the season started 6 months later, because then I would feel a lot better. I feel like we're running up against a calendar that doesn't help him.
Question for you, if you recall, and if you don't, no problem. During our mock draft project, 35 times, do you recall how much exposure you had to Joe Burrow?
Yes.
0?
No, I mean, I didn't draft him.
Okay, that's a good data point, right? So
Yeah, because for
those out
fantasy
there-
purposes,
yeah, that's instructive. If the foremost injury expert in the world says, I didn't draft him 35 times, that should be something that if you're out there and you're super bullish on Joe Burrow or you were kind of fence riding, might influence your decision a little bit.
It helps
influence mine.
I'm sure that's not just about Joe Burrow because of the fact that the quarterback position is pretty deep and there's a lot of other options for you to consider rather than having to go that route.
When you're
Right,
breaking
and
the
I think
tie
that's it,
between,
yeah.
I'm sorry, yeah, but you're breaking the tie between Joe and Dak and
Exactly.
Brock Purdy
Yep.
and Jordan Love.
and that was it. Like if I ended up with him in a 2-quarterback league, I'd be happy to have him. In a single quarterback league where there's lots of options, especially if I play in a 10 or 12 team league, I'm probably going to lean elsewhere.
Sure. All right, last one we have real quick, Stephania. J.K. Dobbins obviously has the potential to be one of the lead backs in this Chargers offense, but he obviously has not been able to stay healthy. How do you feel about him?
This will be interesting. And after coming off his second big injury and he wants to rewrite the narrative on his health, he might get a chance to do just that, especially if his quarterback is compromised and all of a sudden this run game looks, he's got Greg Roman there working with him, so this is very comfortable for him. I'm just concerned about the volume and how it affects him and how he handles it. That's the big unknown.
Sure. Both of these Chargers going very late in draft, so you can get some great value there if you decide to wait on Chargers running backs. All right, back here on Fantasy Focus, Daniel Dopp, Field Yates, Stephania Bell, closing out week 1. A reminder, it's been a great week.
Has been.
It's been a ton of fun. We talked about tiers. We talked about winning your draft. We went through all the rookies. Stephania, you got a setup with a bunch of injuries we need to be concerned about. Not concerned. Injuries we need to monitor throughout the offseason.
Updated the information on it.
Exactly. We're going to have that a bunch throughout the offseason, especially as you continue to go through camps and get a bunch of great information for
Where
us.
do you head to next?
I don't know.
Oh, TBD.
All balls that are in the air being juggled at this moment.
Sort of feel like that's how I live my life.
Yes.
What's next for you? Don't
Believe
know.
me,
Find out in a
that is
couple
me
hours,
every day
hopefully.
right now.
Yeah.
Can you actually juggle either one of you?
No.
Nope, me either. Stephania?
I can do a little juggling.
Really?
What?
Like three balls, not 4. We're not doing machetes or anything.
You can't do
dangerous.
bowling
Like
pins and stuff like
3
that?
balls, yeah.
Tell you what, I get sucked down the Instagram algo every once in a while to like America's Got Talent.
Oh,
Where
yes.
some guy will be like, we'll be juggling other humans. It's like, here, I've got 3 8-year-olds that I'm juggling right now.
I can't tell you how many times I've been, I'm going to just say this real fast, not feeling like I'm in a great mood. And it's like, you know what? Let me go watch some things on YouTube. And it's like the golden buzzer on America's Got Talent.
Oh, my God.
I just I'm weeping by the end of the video.
Cody
Like,
Lee
I'm so
forever.
happy
You know
for
that
him.
reference.
Yes.
You'll understand what I'm
100%.
talking about. Cody Lee is the man.
We got a couple of tweets we want to get to real quickly from our fans. This one comes from Burner Shep. Wants to know, does anyone other than Mike Clay NFL agree with the running back strategy for the first 2 rounds? I think it is viable because of the precipitous drop after basically round 3.
Yeah, Burner Shep, I think I said this maybe during the draft strategy show, but I'll reiterate it is I feel in a 10-team league that I would like to walk away with at minimum 1 running back in my first 2 picks. At minimum. So, yes, I will go for
okay
2
with
running backs, but if it's pick 9 and I get Saquon Barkley and then for some reason Justin Jefferson sitting there at number 11 as well, 12 as well, that's a hard player for me to pass on and pick
Right.
as well.
It's really all relative to how the rest of my draft is going. I usually don't want 2 of them right there because I look at the top tier running backs and to me there's a bigger drop off. So
Yeah.
probably not.
But yes, two is totally
I think
doable.
it's a viable option.
It's viable.
Absolutely viable. 1 minimum. I just want to reiterate that. In a 10-team league, 16-team league, I understand a little bit more innovative strategies because it's very hard in a 16-team league to see a bunch of teams have 2 awesome running backs. A few will, but because wide receivers are going to go early and because quarterbacks, tight ends are going to move up the board a little bit, you are not going to see like half the league stacked at running back and half scraping the bottom of the barrel.
All right, next question comes from BR Shuff. Wants to know which quarterback outside the top 15 preseason rankings do you think has the best chance to finish as a top 8 to 10 QB in standard scoring redraft leagues?
All right, good question there. We talked about Will Levis on the quarterback show as
We
a
did.
potential guy that could make a big push up the boards. I think this is an interesting question in this regard. If you're looking for the player that has a chance to finish as a top 10 scorer for the season, full season scoring, the answer to me might be Tua. But as we know, it might be a chemically imbalanced mix, right? It might be that Tua carves up teams at home where the weather is probably good for Miami, or carves up bad teams. As we know, he has been absolutely dominant against inferior defenses in recent seasons, but when, the push comes to shove against the best part of the schedule, he has left something to be desired. That second half of the season last year was brutal for Tua.
Not great.
So my answer might be Tua, but it comes with a caveat. If you're looking for the guy that gives you the most consistency week in and week out, I think Kirk Cousins, who's right on that border of top 15 in terms of overall rankings right now, might be an interesting name.
Yeah, I was just going to say my pitch would have been Tua, especially after just being down there. Let me tell you, dancing around in practice, it feels good to have a secure contract and not come in off of a huge injury. So I think there's a lot of opportunity.
I'd like to
there.
reiterate that Tua is just a shorter, slower, left-handed version of Jared Goff. But other than that,
That's your mantle for you to wear? I'm sticking out of that one. I like Tua.
on that note, guys, this has been a great start to the show. Week 1 is in the books.
That is.
Super pumped to be back 5 days a week, Monday through Friday, 10 a.m. Eastern Time on ESPN's YouTube. Tuesday and Fridays, we're on ESPN2 at 2 p.m. Check us out on TV. We love you guys. Don't forget to love each other. Be kind to yourself. And we will see you next week. Peace.